Welcome to Life Science Leaders, a series of webinar and podcasts for leaders within the life science industry. Throughout the series, we will be interviewing senior leaders across the sector, covering topics relevant to what's happening in the industry right now and how it's affecting businesses, the markets and people. Today I will be speaking to Stuart Neilson, who is a senior partner at Future Work Forum. So thank you, Stuart, for joining me and welcome. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you today. Would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, sure. Good morning, Lisa, and thank you for inviting me to talk about a topic that I'm very passionate about. And I think all of us are going through quite dramatic change in the workplace, and it's great to have an opportunity and a platform to discuss some of my views. Just for the benefit of anybody listening in, I've been in the commercial world for over 30 years, largely in commercial roles. My last two roles, I was managing director of a hearing company in the UK, where I was fortunate enough to work with a great team, and we tripled the business over the course of a 5-year period. But it's been really about me learning more about myself as a leader. And my last role was a senior vice president of company called Savantos, which is a global hearing group, which was an acquisition of the original Siemens hearing group. So I spent a lot of my time based in Munich and traveling around the world, and seeing a lot of different cultures and a lot of different approaches to work, which really kind of lit the fire in me to better understand what factors and trends are impacting the future workplace. And I'm very passionate about creating a better workplace for everybody, but also better leadership. And fortunately, I think for everybody, I think we're heading in a really good direction. And hopefully this will give me a chance to talk about some of those trends and why we're going to be in a better place hopefully in the next 10 years.
Brilliant, thank you. As you mentioned, Stuart, the topic that we are going to be talking about today is the future of work and the challenges for future leaders, and that it's very much a passion of yours. So what's your general thoughts on the future of work?
Well, the general thoughts is that we're going through a massive transition in our working lives and in the working environment and in the workplace as a whole. And I think a lot of things have been accelerated due to COVID and the pandemic, and we've seen Black Lives Matter suddenly raising the profile of the importance of equality. But even before the pandemic and before the likes of Black Lives Matter, we were already on a major transition curve. And things like the impact of technology has been huge on the workplace, and it's been expanding at an exponential rate. And we've seen the impact of technology, particularly in areas like remote working, which has suddenly been accepted by everybody, whereas previously it was only talked about as pretty much a possibility. One or two companies might have been doing it, but it wasn't commonplace. And this is now starting to fit within people's lifestyles, the ability to work anywhere and anytime. It's a huge trend, and it's going to continue as well, and companies need to really embrace how they facilitate that, how they make that happen. Because I think any organization or company who restricts that flexible working approach in the future, they're not going to be sought after. When you're looking after talent, and talent really does make the difference. You're not going to attract the talent if you don't have the right approach, to things like remote working and having suitable technology in your business in order to run it effectively. So, technology is one of the big drivers of change, and and it will influence where we work and how we work in the future. The other big driver of change, and I'll kind of look a little bit into the future here, is the fact that I think within the next 10 years, over 70% of the workforce will be either a millennial or a Generation Z. And this generation will bring, their own ideas, their own beliefs into the workplace, and their own expectations of what the workplace will bring them. And the result of that is that we'll have a far, the employee power will be much stronger, and the talent will be able to demand things from their employers and they'll have expectations in terms of, they don't just want employers focused purely on profit. They want employers who care about society, who care about the planet, who care about them as individuals, on their own journey, and who care about helping them be the best they can be. So there'll be a lot of employee influences in the workplace in the future, and with that will come this, fairly dramatic shift in leadership style, towards a more caring and compassionate leadership approach that, embraces more of what the employee wants in the future, because they're going to have to, and and the talent will vote with their feet. So
I totally.
I
agree with you, Stuart. I think, especially in terms of the technology itself, changing the way of work. We used to, as someone that works within talent, we were always pushing to have that flexibility, and there were organisations that were actually offering it as an added benefit, whereas today it's not seen as an added benefit. It's something that is almost going to be expected now, to be able to work remotely from home or wherever you are. And essentially what that also allows companies to do is open up their talent pool to be able to manage that. So it's something that we've seen throughout the years, especially from my time working in IQVIA and Johnson & Johnson. We were always promoting it and pushing it. So yeah, I think it's the risk has been taken out of it throughout this pandemic, and people are now seeing that they're able to trust people to work from home and do a good job of it as well, I think.
Yeah, and I think when you look even further out, as this becomes, as you said quite rightly, Lisa, it's going to become a common standard of how companies work. It isn't going to be something unusual. But what it will do as well, it will, particularly for the younger generations who are very digitally orientated, they need to also become comfortable in the human interface.
Yeah.
So, companies will have to, 5 to 10 years from now, companies will need to say, well, actually, we need to also coach and mentor our people in how to interact on a human level, not purely through kind of the digital, channels. So I think it's going to be an interesting parallel journey between, technology and capability and maintaining a human factor where, actually it's okay to meet people face to face and, enjoy their company, get to know them better, understand their personalities and, learn the art of empathy. Which is arguably slightly harder to do on a remote basis. So it's going to be a blend really, and the smart companies will have strategies that say we'll drive down the route of using technology, accepting people's lifestyles, how we fit with their lifestyles, but we'll also make sure we're connecting people as well on a human level, because that that can deliver a lot of productivity as well. So it's a balancing act really, and I guess that's one of the biggest challenges that the leaders are going to have.
Yeah, indeed. I almost feel a little bit old school now, because I love going out and meeting people and seeing them face to face, but you're very right in the sense that the generation coming up are going to have to learn how to do that almost, because they almost tend to it's natural for them. Even when I'm interacting with candidates of the younger age, they like texts, they like emails, they don't necessarily feel the need to have that one-to-one interaction, and that's a little bit scary for me almost.
Yeah, I mean, these topics have been picked up by some companies already, and they kind of, they call it kind of human time, and they're creating spaces in their offices and buildings which are they're technology-free spaces, so they force people in order to engage on a human level. Where you're not allowed to take your iPad or your iPhone. There's no technology there. Some companies are moving meetings off-site to remote locations where you can't get a signal, because they want to drive this connection. And so these things need to be planned now and need to be thought about, because quite rightly, those generations, particularly Generation Z, so dependent on their digital world that they've almost and actually through the way that social media works, they're being fed what they want to hear. They're not being they're not being, and actually because everything's controlled, all the information they're getting is controlled, and and I think that's where having a particular digital strategy which says we're gonna we're gonna make sure that people who work for us are exposed to the real picture. I think is going to be kind of part of that challenge as well, to be honest.
So obviously you mentioned that's going to be some of the challenges for the leaders moving forward. What are going to be some of the other challenges that leaders need to be considering and looking at, and potentially what they're going to be facing?
Yeah, I think one of the things, technology, and this digital development, I kind of bundle it all in with, innovation in this space will mean that, things will change very rapidly. So we've seen a lot of companies reinventing themselves throughout the pandemic. But companies will need to, really watch for, disruptors coming into their market, coming into their space, and being able to, large organizations will need to be incredibly agile in order to compete, or they could find that a relatively small disruptor in their sector or their market, can very rapidly take market share. So, innovation, and I heard a phrase and I really liked it, that innovation should be part of the culture,
yes,
not a strategy, right? So don't make innovation strategy, make it part of the culture, so that you're constantly innovating. And the leaders are going to have to be brave, because they're going to have to, reinvent themselves quickly, change direction quickly.
Yeah.
In some cases, maybe even, look at their own mission statement and say, we need to address that, because everything's changing so rapidly. So that flexibility, being fleet of foot is going to be so important to leaders. And, any company that doesn't have a strong innovation culture, and with that means they need to have a grip on, insights into the world around them, 100% not be focused on what's within their four walls, but look outside, of their own space and be, and understand the influences, because, they're going to have to make changes, they're going to have to make them quickly, they're going to have to look at, what we call big data, they're going to have to look at a lot of data and make quick insights from that data. Yeah, so, analytical roles are going to become, much more important. The people who can look at a lot of data and then quickly draw a conclusion, they're going to be the right hand person to the CEO, because they're going to help them drive the business and make those important decisions. So I think that whole big data management innovation piece is going to be super important.
Are we saying the traditional structure of an organisation in terms of the functions that are in that business are essentially going to change?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the structures need to change anyway in order for the speed of information to travel through the company. So we talk about, flat structures, but almost having no structures, just having job titles in a way, because you need that information to travel rapidly, in both directions. And, I think you and I've talked about this before, but, reverse mentoring needs to happen in every organization, because there's a lot of knowledge in the younger working generations that will benefit the senior people in those organizations, to make decisions. So you've got to bring the generations together, and you won't do that with a big, I'll be a bit seasonal here, but a big Christmas tree structure. It won't work. You need to have a much flatter structure, even no structure at all, to accommodate this speed and fluency of information that needs to travel around the organization. So
obviously within your current network, are you seeing and identifying organizations that are already forward thinking in this way and implementing some of this already, and what industries are doing particularly well in this area versus obviously
I think there's some companies which have kind of moved forward with their strategies, and they're embracing a lot of these changes already. Microsoft is a good one. Over the last 5 years under their new CEO Satya Nadella, they've embraced a lot of embraced innovation as a culture. They've embraced the growth mindset as a culture. They believe in ideas coming from absolutely anywhere within their organization. They've got a huge social responsibility, and they understand that. And the company's actually doubled in value in the last 5 years. So there's some really good big companies that have that are showing that they're willing to not operate with a big structure, but break down those kind of barriers. A company that I would recommend that everybody looks at for a good role model is Patagonia, which is the clothing brand.
Okay.
Which they 100% embrace employee well-being. They provide there's a massive fresh facility at their global head office, and they totally buy into having a purpose beyond profit. So this is very core to their brand and very core to their culture. So there's a lot of companies that are, I think Google have closed down a lot of its offices because of the amount of people who can now work from home. So there is a shift, and there are companies that are doing this. And I would, it's interesting. I know you've got a question later on talking about what does a company look like that would be an ideal place to work. And I've kind of given a little bit of thought to this. I've kind of called it the avatar company. So if there was an avatar company, almost the perfect designed organization, what would it look like? And I'll just run through a few things that it could be, right, if I can. One is to be employee centric, making sure it listens to and recognizes the needs of the employee and the changing needs of the employee. They need to accommodate flexible working patterns and have multiple options of people being able to work anytime, anywhere, with a more of a focus on a results orientation rather than the how. It needs to invest in people, so that they genuinely care about helping people be the best that they can be, and offer full career, options. And what I mean by that is offering a career with diversity in it and a career with variation, because, we're finding, particularly again, the younger generations, they don't want to do the same job, right? They don't want to stay in the same functional area. They want new challenges. So, organizations need to have a purpose beyond profit and a genuine one, where they're investing in things, not just ticking a box for sustainability, but actually caring about something else in society. That could be climate change, it could be more well-being orientated, it could be more charitable based, but people will want to work for companies who are not 100% focused on a financial P&L. So that's going to be within the avatar profile. Fully embrace diversity. This is I think a lot of companies are doing this already, which is great and very encouraging, but there's still not enough women in leadership positions, so that balance needs to be addressed. There's still a gap in between the gender pay levels, that needs to be addressed. But, companies who, great places to work will already be, fully embracing diversity, fully embracing the gender pay gap, and have equality throughout their organization. They'll be investing in technology. They'll be making it an exciting place to work for people. And they'll have, we talked about it before, they'll move towards these flat structures where everybody feels valued for their opinion. And, and the almost the icing on the cake in a way, and really critical thing in those organizations is having the right leadership culture that creates the environment for everybody to, enjoy what they do, and continue to listen, and looks for inspiration outside the company as well as inside it. And those leaders need to be compassionate but still driven. Because people want to be part of a success story, but they want to do it in the right way, and be treated in the right way. So that's my, in a nutshell, that's my avatar organisation. And
sounds like a great organisation. I'm going to come and work for it, Stuart. I think I read an article not so long ago about high trust organisations and the performance of individuals in high trust organisations. The points that you've just made are those high trust organisations. And I think the stats that I was looking at, I think it was Harvard Business School, I think 74% were less stressful, 106% had more energy, then we had 13% fewer sicknesses within those organisations, 76% more engagement, 40% was less likely to burn out, and then you had 29% that had that work-life balance. And as an overall, they were the organisations that people wanted to work for because they had the principles that you've just mentioned as well. So
yeah, and it does come from, it comes from the leadership, and it comes from the leadership culture. And trust is the core, but in order to create trust means you've got to be authentic.
yeah,
So people need to believe what you're saying, and in order to do that, again, you've got to connect with people. So empathy is such an important part of being a leader now. If you can't empathize, people find it hard to relate to you,
yeah,
and therefore trust is a difficult thing to create. So you absolutely have to know what it's like to spend some time in the shoes of other people at all levels in the organization. And trust comes from visibility and transparency, and having and genuinely caring about the well-being of the people who work for you. Because if you don't genuinely care, people will, human nature picks that up, and if you care about people, they'll be confident that they can trust you.
yeah.
And I have something that resonated with me when I was a managing director of a hearing company in the UK. We made a lot of changes. We had to restructure at times. Sometimes we had to lay people off. We had to keep the business highly, competitive. And when I left the organisation, there was one employee, a lady who kind of made life quite challenging for me. Would always asking me questions, always challenging what I did. And I thought, this lady probably doesn't really care too much for me or like me very much, but I'm doing my job.
Yeah.
And when I addressed the company on my final day, the one person who stood up and said something was this lady who, I'm thinking, well, what is she going to say? What, pleased to see the back of you or something. And she said, no. She said, look, personally, I'm really sorry to see you go. She said, because above everything else, she said, I trusted you. And she said, and that meant a lot. It meant a lot to me and everybody. And I kind of, for me, I was really kind of, moved to get that kind of feedback from somebody I'd had quite an abrasive relationship with. But to me, that was important, and it kind of, it lives with me as a, as an experience.
Exactly. That's lovely. Yeah, that's nice. Do you think that the pandemic has kind of highlighted or given organisations the opportunity to really prove that element to their employees and consolidate some of that?
Yeah, I think it's been, I think it's really tested organisations and leaders, because they've had to engage with their employees in a different way. They've had to say, how do we keep them engaged? What are they going through here? Employees have a certain vulnerability now. We've seen huge increases in, the number of people that have been made redundant. People being furloughed. People around the world have not been certain of future employment, and leaders have had to keep them engaged, and talk to them about what are they doing in order to manage this, and create a future that's more certain. And that's difficult in COVID world because there's so much uncertainty.
Yeah.
So organizations really have had a great opportunity to embrace the communication, respect individuals and their family circumstances and situations, not force them back to work when they could have done, because there's other factors in the background, maybe childcare requirements. It's been very, very challenging, and I think, and organizations have had an opportunity to create trust and create potential loyalty for the future in how they've managed the pandemic.
Okay. So going back to some of the challenges that we spoke about, how does this affect the talent management and the retention piece?
I think to look at the kind of talent management piece, I think first of all, bringing talent in makes a huge difference. I know you operate in the world of talent, so you know that, right? But I think I saw statistically that a high performance person can, compared to an average person, it can make something like 800% difference to productivity. The gap of performance between attracting great talent and average talent is huge. So you know, organizations will need to make sure they're attracting talent, and the challenge that they will have is what does their employer branding look like? You know, how are they communicating with people who may potentially work for them? So, you know, in order to do that effectively, you need to understand what is the talent looking for. And I think we've kind of, probably the avatar organization that we discussed, you know, is an idea about how do you promote that to, you know, to talent. And you can promote it through organizations like yourself, but you can also promote it on, you know, social media. You can promote it on your own website. You know, I think building relationships with people who don't work for you today, you know, is going to be as important as building a relationship with those who do, because you need to build your employee brand, communicate very clearly what you believe in, you know, and demonstrate that. So there'll be, you know, in future there'll be employee branding strategies that are really high up the agenda, because it will make the difference between attracting talent and not attracting it. But I think, you know, employers should be looking broader than their home markets for talent. You know, we're in a global talent pool now, you know, particularly with people being able to work remotely. You know, yes, you might have a time zone issue, but if they're close to the time zone, then you can recruit people from all around the world. And, you know, and also recognize and acknowledge that it's not just the academic high performers that will be the ones who contribute, because you'll need people with those other skill sets like compassion and human skills, which come with a high EQ, not just a high IQ. So, you know, in that kind of talent piece, you know, I think leaders should be looking for people with, you know, rounded skills, and not just you know, high academic performance.
I agree. It goes back to the diversity. You need lots of different personalities, skill sets, expertise to build up a strong team. There's never any use having a team of the same type of people. And there are clear people out there with different skill sets that can come from different industries into new industries. And in actual fact, it's almost an expectation for the younger generation to be able to go from one industry to another, because they're looking at their soft skills and their clear synergies in terms of skill sets that they can take with them. So there is an expectation there from them to be able to do that.
No, I totally agree with you, and I think, you know, one of the core attributes for a, you know, successful person in a company in future will be having entrepreneurial capability. You know, and being an entrepreneur doesn't necessarily mean you've set up lots of companies. It just means you have a mindset that says, you know, I overcome challenges rather than stop because of them. And I think that you know, that is an entrepreneurial mindset, and that, you know, that's not bred purely by, you know, educational academics. That's bred by inner, you know, an inner skill set. It's a different skill set, and, you know, having a, you know, realizing entrepreneurs are going to be super important to reinventing yourself and looking for new opportunities. You know, there's going to need to be a different way to assess talent. You know, and that's going to become, you know, going to become the responsibility of all the leaders, managers, you know, HR teams in those organizations are going to have to think about that differently. Otherwise they'll miss some great talent because they may be too narrow in their program.
Indeed, I think the future for talent coming into organisations is very exciting, and it's exciting from my perspective because I get to see it from all angles and identify that talent, but also seeing and working with clients that are taking a different mindset, and the mindset such as you mentioned is great. We need more people or more organisations doing that, I think.
And that is really part of the educational role for, you know, for the likes of yourself, really, you know, to help educate your clients on what, you know, what they may need to do in order to attract the best talent. Because if they don't, the price is too high. You know, if your competitors are able to attract the talent and not you, you know, it will fundamentally make a huge difference. So, you know, these are factors that, you know, previously probably were, you know, not really talked about at a management board level, but need to have a place on that agenda in the future. And, you know, the successful companies of the future will acknowledge this, and they'll make it much more important and work with increasing specialists in their area.
So what would you say are the main key areas that companies need to prepare for the future?
I think we've mentioned one in lots of, in quite a lot of detail, but, making sure that the employer, builds their brand so that they can attract talent. That's going to be really important. They can start doing that now. If they haven't started doing it, then they should do. If they need help and assistance, they should look outside, talk to people like yourself. Employer branding companies are out there that can help with them and support it. So that's going to be really important. I think they can start, profiling their leaders, for the future. If they have leaders who lack empathy, and there are still some out there, who are more direct command and control types. Well, I'm not saying there isn't a role for them, but, have a role that plays to their skill set, and then start to nurture and train and, potentially bring in those new attributes in your leaders in order to create a platform for the future. So set the foundations right, so yes, train and develop leadership in the people who are, your talent, but also bring in people with that different profile. I think that's important. Engage, start engaging the views of everyone in your organization. Really open the channels up of communication with the, your latest employee could be bringing an idea that's so relevant to your business that you have no idea about, because they see the world differently to you. So open up those channels, start that process of reverse mentoring where, an 18-year-old in the business can mentor a 55-year-old board member, as an example, and it's commonplace and it becomes normal, and I think organizations can start that process. I think if you don't have a purpose beyond your profit, then really think hard about, what your organization is trying to do. Think about what the expectations of future employees will be. Take a look at the Sustainable Development Goals that the United Nations have been promoting and pushing towards, and say, how can our company help? Because doing it proactively, is a lot better than the government forcing that type of change on you as a company. So, and employees will know that. So, make it important, and have an agenda that's that runs parallel with your profit agenda. That's giving something back to society and creating a better world. And I would point people in the direction of the B corporations. The B corporations are companies who are certified that they have a focus beyond profit. They're actually very, very successful companies. Companies like Patagonia and Danone's and Ben and Jerry's, they're all B corporations. And I would urge people to look at that. Look at that kind of certification, because it kind of means you're doing a lot of the right things. Make innovation a way of working. Don't make it a strategy. Invest in your technology. Because one, it's a great enabler, and two, your employees are going to expect to have access to the right technology as well. So from a company preparation perspective, those are the key things. And learn from other organizations. Part of your preparation should be to look at, how Patagonia doing it. What are Microsoft doing? Look at the leaders of the industries that have been progressive. And I forgot to talk a lot about my role as a partner at the Future Work Forum, but read the articles that our partners produce, because we're mapping out the future. We're giving guidance to what particularly leaders and companies should be thinking about for the future. So I think that now is the time not to navel gaze, but to think outside of your own environment.
In actual fact, I was going to ask you, Stuart, so the Future Work Forum, what is it that you're able to help and offer and provide organisations or individuals that are really looking into this from your perspective?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the Future Work Forum is a think tank of, let's call them creative and expert people in their own fields. We've got around 25 partners. They're all based, globally. So we have a real global perspective. We come together as a group every 2 weeks. We have, at the moment, because we're not doing it face to face, we do it through, through Zoom calls, where we you know, where we're a think tank. We challenge each other on the future of work and the trends that are happening. And as a result of that, you know, many of the partners have written books on the future of work. So if you go onto our website at futureworkforum.com, you can see all the publications written by all the partners. But we also, you know, constantly writing articles on the future of work. We've published, I think, something like 15 or 16 significant articles this year, you know, all on different topics of the future of work, from, you know, leadership changes to, you know, how to deal with office space, you know. So, you know, it's very, very relevant, very, very topical. You know, and every year we write a series of articles as well for the European Forum of Management Development, and, you know, all of these are published to all the business schools around the world. So, you know, I think it's not, you know, the material isn't just for business schools. You know, I think it's worthwhile, you know, looking at this material and content. If you're a, you know, you're a leader, even if you're a, you know, a manager in any organization, you know, and you have an interest in these topics, then the future work, you know, can help to guide your decision making, and maybe, you know, give you some ideas on how to create a better company, better organization, better, you know, better leadership culture. And you know, it's a super organization to be part of. And yeah, I'd recommend everybody to, you know, to follow us on LinkedIn, and to, you know, maybe look at our website from time to time.
And just, are you the partners across all industries? Are they from all areas? Or?
Yeah, they vary. I mean, some people have been, you know, they've been academics. They've maybe run business schools. Some are from the world of management consultancy. Some are from the world of, you know, we've had some senior people from HR, yeah, but very much a cross section of industries. So, you know, we can provide input from, you know, for most industry sectors. But yeah, what's great about it is the variation of skill sets that we have amongst the partners, and, you know, their own fields. We almost, through recruitment of new partners, we're trying to bring partners in who have a specialist area, which can, you know, broaden what we do as a forum. But, you know, quite central is actually, you know, leadership for the future is quite, you know, it's quite a topical area where we do have a lot of expertise.
Indeed. Well, I'm working my way through some of the publications that you've done on your website, so they are very interesting, and I'm learning quite a lot from them as well. So thank you for that, and I look forward to obviously more coming up. But I think that's all we've got time for today. So I'd like to thank you for all of your input and insight into the future of working. I know that the audience will benefit from it, and of course, if anybody has any questions, then please don't hesitate to contact us directly and ask. But do make sure that you look at the Future Work Forum, and I look forward to you guys tuning in again or listening to our podcast for our second series. So thank you very much. And thank you, Stuart, for all your time. I really appreciate it.
No, thanks, Lisa. Appreciate the opportunity to talk about these topics. It's been a great session. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thanks very much.